We gotta get
Listen,
going.
where you playing in town? You playing here?
We're doing the Normo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
a
the big
house. We
place,
sold
that
it out.
side of town. That's a
Very
big
nice.
place. You sold
What's
it
that,
out.
20,000
I'll say.
seats? We really should.
The hell are you doing? I couldn't sleep. I'm checking the ropes. There was a frayed end on your rope, and I'm cutting it out. Good weather, bad weather. Now or later, anytime is good for climbing.
Hello and welcome to the Normal Cast. This is your host, Chris Kalous. This is episode 11. It is May 13th, about 10 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. And on today's show, we have an interview with climber Craig Demartino, who has a hell of a story to tell. But before we get to that, there's some big news. We have a sponsor, folks. I repeat, we have a sponsor. Defiant Bean Roasters is a company started with others by a friend and climber, Jeff Hollenbaugh. They take responsibly sourced quality beans and hand roast them. Yes, Jeff's hands are very, very hot. Then they pack them up while they're still smoking and send them to you ground or whole or whatever you're into. I think Jeff will even split them individually if necessary. And better yet, Defiant Bean Roasters is offering the Enormocast listeners a special offer. Enter ENORMO in the coupon code at checkout and get 10% off and 10% for the Enormocast. So head over to defiantbean.com, order up just an absolute shitload of coffee, and then enter ENORMO at the coupon code and get 10% off, and then we get 10%. Isn't that awesome? It's a triple win. You support a climber, you support the Enormocast, and best of all, you get awesome, fresh roasted, delicious coffee. Just imagine those boxes arriving to your house and then you ripping them open and the aroma of fresh coffee just burning through your senses, getting you psyched, getting you stoked, making you want to poop, whatever. So that's pretty exciting. If you can't figure it out, head over to normalcast.com and click on the Defiant Bean banner, and that'll take care of you. It'll run you right through the whole process. Now, on to my interview with Craig Demartino. Craig is a climber who lived through every climber's worst nightmare, and that's a serious crater from a long way up, 100 feet no less, into the talus. And not only did he survive, he came out the other side a better man. And more than just recounting his accident, Craig's attitude explains a ton about why we all climb and the gifts that climbing gives us. I know that sounds a little bit hokey, but strap in for this one. Prepare to sweat, prepare to cry. You might pee your pants. I mean, it is over an hour long. But if you listen to it in two parts, can't get through the whole thing at once, I'd recommend you just stop right when Craig gets his leg amputated. Wait, what did I just say? Yeah, sitting across the table from this guy, listening to his story blew my little mind. I wish you could have been there. Wait, that's where we're going right now. To the mobile studio with Craig Demartino.
Yeah, it's the Ghost in the Machine.
Yeah.
Because that'll be on the recording.
Well, because when I'm driving, if my phone's sitting
Yeah.
in my radio,
Yeah.
my phone's going to ring.
Yeah. Well, even playing live music, if you leave it on the amp, on my
I didn't
guitar
know that.
amp, yeah, anywhere there's like electrical sound speaker signal, it's like gets in there. Yeah. So you just know it's probably also in your brain doing stupid,
Yeah, exactly.
horrible things. So,
Feel my legs.
All right, so back to this thing. All right, we're sitting in the podcasting Normalcast mobile studio. Craig Demartino, Front Range Colorado climber, is my guest.
Thank you very much. Not much. Thank you for having me.
All right,
Love it.
Craig's in town in Carbondale, so I tracked him down and made him sit in the studio because he is part of a movie premiere that's happening tomorrow on
night.
Sunday, tomorrow night.
Yes.
In conjunction with my arch nemesis,
Fitzcahall
of the Dirtbag Diaries.
And we're the last movie, and
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure if that's like we'll just put it in, or if it's like let's do it on purpose. I don't know.
The honored closer.
We're after Scandy, so I'm not sure if that's like a good thing or I didn't
After
ask.
what?
After Andy Lewis.
Oh, right on.
Sketchy Andy.
Oh, right on.
So he's in he's in force, and I remember looking at the whatever schedule and thinking, oh, I wonder if that's bad. But Fitz doesn't seem worried, so cool. I'm not worried.
Is he in town, do you think?
He's in town.
Oh, man, he'd be...
Oh, wait, Andy?
Yeah.
That I don't think.
Oh, okay.
Because isn't he torn... He's with Madonna.
Well, no, I actually have seen him humping around down in Moab the last few weeks. So
okay,
I don't know.
Never mind.
I mean, I know what he looks like. He's got the crazy haircut.
Yeah, crazy haircut. And,
yeah.
Maybe he's here then.
Yeah, so anyway,
find out tomorrow.
I'll find out. I'd love to, Andy, if you're listening, come on the show.
Come on in right now.
Anyhow, so you got a movie premiere, and it's the premise is basically surrounding your major climbing accident.
Right.
And your recovery from this.
Right.
Okay.
And it's called The List.
The List.
And The List is it's based around kind of after going through rehab and all that stuff. Going back to climbing, deciding to go back to climbing, number one, and then just how I structured it to go back to climbing.
Okay. How does it sort of get released to the public? Do you even know?
It's I don't. It's really weird. I gotta be honest with you. Like when you coming down here, I was thinking to myself, this is really kind of weird. Like, and you come in and you see these people who you read about and whatever, you know. And I have a boy crush on Jimmy Chin, and so you meet them and you're like, wow,
he's a beautiful man.
He's a beautiful man. He's that nice hair and everything. Yeah. And so, you know, I'm talking to him last night and you're just like, this is really weird. It's like, it's just a place you never think like our sport especially is going to get to, like a film festival. That's just weird. So I don't know. I mean, and as the athlete, you have no control basically. I mean, you just trust who you're working with, and I trust Fitz 100%. So he just says this is where it's going to be. You should be there. It's a good thing.
Right.
So you just kind of go with it.
Right. I'm just curious because, you know, eventually I'd love to post something so people could find it, if not to watch it, to buy it, or I mean, I don't know how it works. But anyway, in the future, we'll have the list up on a way to get your hands on it whenever the public can get their hands on it. So.
And then maybe I can buy it, which would be cool.
Then you could get one too.
Exactly. That'd be really nice. Christmas present kind of stuff.
So anyway, and you haven't even seen it.
I'm not. I've only seen pieces.
Okay, cool. I was going to actually ask you if you had what the industry calls a screener.
Oh.
So I could have watched it before this, but you haven't even seen it.
I don't even know what that is. I'm like,
well, it's the pre-copies that like critics and people get.
No.
You know? But yeah,
I don't even. Yeah. Like I said, I trust him completely, so I'm like, it's fine. Although yesterday he scared me a little because we were walking over to this thing last night, and he's like, hey, just to give you a heads up, your shirt's off a lot in this one. And I'm like, why? What do you mean? And he's like, no, just so you heads up. I'm like, oh, damn it. Okay, that's cool. Thanks for telling me now, because now I'm here. I'm fucked.
Right, your shirt's off?
Yeah.
Well, if your shirt was...
Well, because he got me trained. Like, so obviously when you have to do rehab, you have to do a lot of training to get... Because your body's so jacked up, and it's like teaching it to redo everything. And so he would come in on these training sessions, and I was working with Brad Jackson and on the Front Range, and you know, it's hot as hell, and you know, so we would be training, and Fitz was, and you forget he's there because he's so good at what he does. They just kind of blend in.
Right.
Well, yeah, you forget that stuff, and so then 6 months later, he's like, hey, oh, by the way, when it goes in front of 500 people who you don't know, your shirt's off quite a bit. And I'm like, that's awesome.
That's all right.
That's great.
People are going to be impressed.
No, or not. It's like, shit.
Cool. All right. Well, so how old are you?
46.
46. Damn, you don't look 40. All right. Anyway, you're from Loveland, Colorado, which is north of Boulder.
Yep.
You have a family.
Got a family.
Married, 2 kids.
Wife and 2 kids.
Yeah.
Been married for going on 16 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good job, man.
She's a good lady. She's a great lady, actually.
And apparently her and I have a small connection that she came in at the Colorado Mountain School right after I left.
Right. When we met, she was guiding. Well, she just started guiding, and you had just left.
Yeah, and you know, it's a possibility that we actually have met because I was like in and out. And you had 2 kids, a boy, girl.
Girl.
We were just joking about them. They're both one's teen, a tween, and the other one's just coming in through teenage years. And I was making fun of Craig because I used to teach high school, and I know what he's in for.
You know. Oh. It's good. I mean, they're fantastic kids. They're so funny. They're just like, they don't like to climb, which is funny to me. They're cool. I mean, our daughter's almost 14, and she's, like you said, just like this whole world is beginning, and it's like, oh, crap.
Right on. Yeah, and you were telling a story about her interface with this climbing community, you know. Could you tell?
They've grown up around climbers, you know. Right. And that's what we do. So they just are so used to like people who live in their cars, they're just like, it's not normal, but they're like, yeah, people do that. Well, if you want to go climb all the time, that's what you do. You live in your car. And so but she can read them. Like, nope, we'll be at a climbing area, and she's like, yep, that guy's baked. Or, nope, that guy's not. That guy's kind of cool, but that guy's a jerk. I mean, she won't say what I would probably say, but she'll be like, that guy's kind of full of himself. And she doesn't like people who, like, lots of people spray, and she's not super into that. So she's kind of funny. Like, she'll just sit quietly back and watch the whole thing unfold around the campfire, and then later, so what'd you think of so-and-so? Oh, that guy's kind of a tool, and he thinks this, and he thinks he likes himself quite a bit. And I'm like, oh, okay.
That's awesome.
And this
14-year-old.
Yeah. And this festival, like, we've never been to a film festival. I mean, I've been to Real Rock and that kind of stuff. But her comment to me was, well, so like, is everything like a climbing movie? Because I really don't want to watch that. And I'm like, yeah, it's 3 days of climbing movies. No, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
They'd have loved that. That Billabong thing, surfing.
Oh,
I almost peed my pants last night. Dude. I was just like, oh my, get out of the water, dude.
Yeah. Hopefully, is she coming?
She'll be here.
Yeah. So hopefully she'll enjoy herself. So cool. So you're a family guy. So what kind of climber are you? I mean, I don't really know you as a climber. So what's your motivations? When
I started climbing, I remember thinking, okay, I want to be able to do all of it. You know, I want to do all the disciplines. I don't want to focus on just bouldering or trad climbing or whatever. So I do everything. And
how long ago did you start?
24 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Long time.
Yeah, so we're right in there.
Yeah.
I'm about 22.
Yeah. And so I remember back then it was like you wanted to be solid in everything. And like I was on the East Coast then, so it was,
then they're definitely like,
you better be able to do it all, Right. And so, and then even when I moved out here, I just thought, I don't want to do, because I would get bored. I think if I just bouldered, I'd probably get bored if I just trad climb, whatever. So I like doing all of it. Because I'll go through phases where I'll just do one and then bounce around and do the other stuff.
All right. Well, let's get into this accident.
All right. Accident.
So you, again, the movie's coming from this rehab from a very serious accident. So can you sort of lead us into that? How long ago it was, and what kind of went down?
2002. Was climbing with a buddy of mine who we climbed together forever, and we were up in the park a lot. Like almost every week, we were up in the park, just kind of ticking routes off that we had heard about.
All right, this is an international podcast.
We're in
Greg.
Rocky Mountain National Park in the United States of America, which is
because in Carbondale the park is Rifle Mountain Park. So
oh really?
Yeah.
No, not that.
Okay, cool.
So we were in Rocky Mountain National Park.
Okay, thanks.
A lot, and we were just kind of like, okay, so like we had heard about this route, heard about that route, so we would go and do it, and we were kind of taking stuff off left and right, having a blast, and got into July, and he wanted to do turnkey buttress on Sundance.
Okay.
Last rock on Lumpy Ridge.
Okay.
And so,
oh, wow, you're way out there.
Way the hell out there.
Okay.
And so blazed out there on July 21st and hoofed it and got to the base, and it was perfect day, beautiful. Started up it, and I felt kind of crappy that day. I don't know why. It just was one of those, sometimes you're going out and you're nervous, and usually as soon as I tie in, I'm fine. But like I remember tying in thinking, I just don't feel that great. And first pitch is pretty easy, 5'9", kind of scrambly thing, and got up into this sledge system. He takes off, and we got 4 pitches, and you're under a roof, and got under the roof, and this big ass storm came trucking across the valley, and you could watch it come.
I used to guide on that thing.
So and you watch longs just disappear, and you're like, we're going to get hammered.
Right.
And so we were under a roof, so we just waited, and it just opened up. Hail, grapple, rain, everything. Wind blowing ropes up. It was sucking, and the cracks we were in just started running with water. So we were like, okay, we're going down. So we went down, typical Colorado. Got to the base, it stopped raining, and sun came out, dried everything pretty quick, and he knew about this climb called White Man, just up the hill a little bit.
Sure.
And so we went up to White Man, and he had top roped it with someone before, and he's like, I think you should lead that. And it was totally dry. And so I was like, yeah, this is cool. And walking up to it, he said, let's top rope it. And so when I heard top rope, I'm in my head, top rope to me means that I'm going to lead it. I'm going to set an anchor up, lower off, and then belay you from the ground.
Sure.
But I never said that to him because, again, we climbed probably 7 years together. Pretty lax on our belay commands, all that. Walked over, racked up, took off, led the climb, got to the ledge, which is 100 feet up, and there's 3 bolts in the rock up there. Clipped in, And when I clipped in, I set it up as almost like a sport climbing, three draws into one center point.
Sure.
Equalized it, ran my rope through and clipped into the whole thing and yelled off belay to him. And he was like, okay, cool. Well, by not clarifying top roping with him, he was like, okay, so now I'm going to go up to him and we're going to wrap off together.
Right.
And so he unclipped, went over and got his shoes out of his backpack, which is totally normal. I mean, that's what I do. And so I'm up there. I get make sure everything's equalized, everything's ready to roll. I was going to clean my gear on my way down. That's what I was thinking.
Sure.
And so I yelled, okay, it's all you, thinking, okay, now I'm ready to be lowered.
Right.
I had my stuff together. And so he didn't even look up. He said, I was looking at my backpack, and he just turned around and went, okay, and yelled that. I heard okay, so I'm like, okay, so he's got me. So I just pulled up, sat, and that was it. And I remember when I sat, the anchor just started going, and I'm like, the anchor's going. And I remember thinking, he has just a ton of slack in the system for some reason. And I thought maybe he did one of those things where you just, feed a lot of slack out so the guy can rig the anchor. And I kept thinking, okay, it's going to come tight here at any minute. And it didn't, obviously. And so I start going and realizing I'm going. And just from bouldering and when you come off of something, I kind of pushed away from it because it's kind of just dead vertical, pushed and turned to look. And that's the last thing mentally I remember. Sure. And as I was falling, then it flipped me backwards. And that got me going horizontal, kind of falling horizontally. And about 20 feet from the ground, there's a tree. And I hit the dead tree with my head. So I landed standing on my feet, literally like the spot that I left from, I almost hit that again. Augured into the ground and I hit so hard that my climbing shoes, the rubber on the bottom actually just exploded out, and all the bones, both ankles, what is that called? When it comes out of your skin.
Oh yeah,
there's a word for that. Compound fracture. So both ankles and heels, compound fracture out. Then I crumpled it, and I hit so hard that my back actually didn't snap it; it crushed itself. You look like you're going to throw up.
We're going to have to take a break after this. But...
I'm sweating.
I am too. Are you really?
No, I was just laughing at you now.
You're just fine with it. I'm over here. My palms are sweating.
Damn it. No more blood.
No, it's not the blood. It's the whole...
Always because in your climber, that's what you know. And,
anyway, keep going.
So
I'll make it.
Keep going. Sorry, I'm going to be okay. My spine the way I hit, L2 is like right at your belly button. I hit so hard it just collapsed it and crushed it, and it sprayed it into my spinal canal. So that kind of folded me a little bit, and when it folds you, your head whips down. So I broke my neck then at C6, punctured my lung on my right side because I broke my ribs on the right side. Basically, my right side just got destroyed. Hit my elbow, tore up my your rotator cuff. My arm must have been down like this because it shoved my elbow up and just tore that. Then I just kind of crumpled down onto the ground, and I had hit, because the compound fractures, I ruptured the artery in my right leg. So Steve was like, oh crap, and he runs over to me. And the next thing, he's like, I'm looking up. And the next thing I remember is he was just like right in my peripheral vision screaming at me. And I'm just like, shit, there's something stuck in my back. And it just felt like there was a rock in my back. And I said to him, get me off. I'm laying on a rock. Get me off this rock. And he's like, okay. And he's trying to figure out what the hell to do. And so I'm losing a ton of blood. Yeah, he's flipping out. But he had been climbing a long time too, had seen accidents before. So he kind of kept his cool, got a sling, put a tourniquet on my leg to kind of slow the blood flow. And so Lumpy is pretty long, and we were about 4 miles.
Yeah, you're way out there.
You're way the hell out there. And there's no one out there that day. So he's
no one climbs out there anyway.
Nobody climbs out there. And he's just like, okay. He's like, so here's what I got to do. I got to get back to the truck, drive into Estes, and get a rescue.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, that's a good plan. So he with a broken neck, a broken back, ribs, punctured lung, he puts his arms under my armpits, and he drags me down off the talus into, there's a dirt spot, a flat spot, and he laid me there and made me as comfortable as he could, slowed the bleeding as much as he could. And he's like, okay, I'll be back. And he starts to take off running, and he got about maybe, I don't know, he said like 20 yards. And he was like, whoa, wait a minute. He turns on, he comes back, and he had packed a cell phone in his bag. I never, now I do, but I used to never carry a phone.
Right.
And he had a phone with him, and Sundance is about 1,000 feet. We're in Rocky Mountain National Park, crappy cell reception. Turns his phone on, and he gets a signal. dials 911. They pick up right away, and they patched him through to Rocky Mountain Rescue. And the guy who is the head of that answers the phone, and his name's Eric Gabriel. And Eric's a climber, old school climber, been up there forever. And he was like, I know exactly where they are, so just tell them not to move. And so he was on like a 3-way call, and Eric was there probably in 45 minutes. Because they have a agreement with the McGregor Ranch.
Sure, to
come
drive
through the
in
gate.
there.
Yeah, I had a trained EMT within 45 minutes. Bill Alexander, another EMT, was there probably 10 minutes after Eric. But then you got to do the whole litter. I mean,
because you guys, to describe this, there's a very nice flat valley, but to approach the climb, you've gone up this basically kind of steep switchbacky trail through like pine trees and steep rocks and things like that.
And then you get to the talus, and you're in
and then there's talus for a while. So they have a pretty significant litter carry to get you down to where that chopper is going to land.
So they had to lower off the talus, and then even through the trees, they had to go slow because I guess they anchor you. They don't want to just like walk. And it's too steep.
It's all that protection of a spine injury. Because I've been involved in those rescues when I was guiding in Estes. And they do all these controlled lowers on. Kind of bizarre the way that they it's not bizarre, it makes sense, but they anchor off of trees and then kind of pull the litter tensioned against these ropes so they can keep it really smooth and steady as they're really still just going down like a it's a 45-degree like rock and talus slope, but it takes a long time to get down.
5 hours to get from the base of the climb to where the chopper was.
So are you during this? So they've got you stabilized in the litter, and you're
completely
awake.
Well, and because I punctured my lung, you couldn't give me any pain meds. So Eric's like, and I talk about this in the movie, the only thing, like, you're hurt, obviously. You're cold, number one. But the only thing that hurt was my back. What happens is, you're strapped down, and so stuff comes into your peripheral vision. You can't see anything, and all of a sudden there's a face, and he's like, hey, how you doing? How you feeling? We're getting you, we're moving, we're making progress. So you're kind of aware, but he came in at one point during this 5 hours and said, do you want me to call your wife? And I was like, man, no, don't call my wife. That's a bad idea. I don't want her to know I'm hurt. I don't even know what's going on. And he's like, okay. And he's gone. And then Steve is there for a little bit. And then, you hear the other rescue. You hear it happening, but you don't have any clue. And all of a sudden he comes back in again and he's like, hey, do you want me to call your wife? And I remember thinking the second time, why did he ask me twice? And because, you don't have anything else to think about. So then I was like, I wonder if he's asking me because I'm hurt really bad. And I'm like, then how bad am I hurt? You don't have any idea because they don't tell you, oh, dude, you're jacked.
You are so...
Yeah, you're not going to make it to the chopper, just to let you know. And that's what he's thinking. He's like, he's not going to live, so we should get his wife here. And we've talked since that, and that's what he said to me. He was like, if I was dying, I would want to see my wife one more time. Well, he can't tell me that. So he's like, yeah, I think we should call your wife. And I'm like, okay, call her. Fine. So then all of a sudden in my world, he leaves, and then all of a sudden my wife's there, and I'm like, hey... She's like, everything's cool. The first thing she said to me was, everything's fine. The kids are with our friend Audrey. And she's like, they're just going to get you down. And I was like, okay. And I remember just thinking she looked really worried. And that kind of is in your head, like, I wonder why she's so worried. And then you're out again. You're just kind of, gone. And the next thing I know, we were at the chopper. I just remember seeing the blades.
Right.
And they put me at that, again, I had not felt my feet yet. And, they get me onto the litter to go into the chopper, and there's a bulkhead. They slide you in it looks like a little oven.
Sure.
And so I remember looking, and they picked me up and slid me in, and my feet were sticking up like that, and they hit the bulkhead. And that was when I was like, my feet are broken because it hurt so freaking bad. It was like pain. That 1 to 10 scale doesn't
they're
even
like,
cut
sorry,
it.
bro.
Yeah, they're just like, shit. We hit his feet, bloody feet. And so that was the flight nurse though was like, hold on, and I'm freaking screaming, and he's just like, hold on. And he took some vitals. He's like, here we go, and he just put an IV in me, and I remember seeing the syringe. Right. That's the last thing I remember. Now I was evidently awake because I gave him a bunch of information on the flight into Poudre Valley, but yeah, that's the last thing I remember. And then the next thing I remember is waking up in ICU, just opening my eyes, and there's a doctor there, and I'm like, "What? You're so confused." And they don't tell you, you are jacked up. They're just
Right.
like, okay, here's the deal. Here they talk really slowly because you're so medicated and morphine fog. And he said you broke your back and you broke your feet really bad, and that's all he said. And he was like, we're working on. I was on a ventilator because I couldn't breathe, and so he's like, you're going to be on that until we get you stabilized. And they don't reveal much to you. Cindy knew everything. Obviously, when they brought me in, the doctor came out and he's like, he's got about an hour to live. He's lost a lot of blood. What do you want us to do? And my poor wife had to fill out those papers, that don't resuscitate him. If he dies, he dies. I understand. You guys are doing everything you can. And that's what he said was, we're going to do everything we can. But.
Whoa, so they were basically like, yeah, this guy's done for.
Yeah.
Holy
Because
cow.
I had so much trauma to me. I had like both feet, ankles, ribs, back, neck, tons of cuts, tons of just cracked bone, not even broken bones, but just, fractures here, there, that. And then they're like, he's probably got head trauma because he probably hit his head somewhere. So they just said, and I lost a lot of blood. And they just told her, he's very close to where we don't even know what we should do. And at that point, they said we should probably cut both his feet off right now because they're so badly damaged. Ugh. But luckily, the one doctor said he's lost so much blood, let's not do that because it's probably going to be bad. So the first thing they did was they decompressed your spine, so they have to pull it apart to get all that crap out of anything that touches your spinal canal gives you paralysis. Sure. So, like that guy last night film, the skier who broke his back. And it was interesting to hear how his back just severed and then they fuse it. And so that's what they did to me too. They pull it apart, they clean it, and then they fuse it. And so I have bars and rods and screws in my back for 4 levels, my lumbar spine. They screw that all back together, decompress it, clean it, and then kind of hope for the best. They flip you over, and that's all they can do.
Right.
And then they went to work on my feet. So in that interim, the guy who was going to cut my feet off said, let's just wait. Let's just wrap them up. And that's what they did. They just basically kind of bandaged them and just said, we're going to call that good and see if he lives through the night.
Worry about that later.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, got bigger fish to fry. At this point, I mean, let's see if he lives. And then it's a waiting game. You wake up and you're like, you're in and out and in and out. And, my wife was there, and then all of a sudden my parents were there,
right?
Which they don't even live in Colorado. They're in Delaware.
So now
and
really
you're just like,
okay,
what the hell are they doing here?
So let me back up real quick. How far did you fall? I've done that pitch.
100
I mean,
feet.
It's 100. It's pretty even 100, right?
They taped it. Yeah. They because for the accident report they had to tape it, and
right.
so Eric said, we put the tape at the anchor and
right.
to the ground is 100 feet. So he's like, your feet were probably at 98.
So you should have died.
Absolutely.
Like 50 different times.
Yeah. Well, there's
day.
that old adage of, if you fall 10%, you have a 10% chance of dying. 20,
okay.
30. You can do the math. I mean, I fall 100 feet, you should be dead. But because I landed standing, that's
like your body, like
it's a shock absorber, and
in terms of your vital parts,
it just all crushes down. So if you land on your back or your side, it just collapses and crushes.
Right, all your organs are done for.
But your feet, you have a chance to soak up that shock wave. And like a lot of roofers do that. They'll come off a roof and they land standing, and that's how they live. Because, I mean, I've met guys who have fallen. Heck, I met a guy who fell 6 feet, and he's completely paralyzed. He's quadriplegic. And so you're like, how the hell does that happen? I mean, I don't even understand that, but it's just our bodies do this weird thing. Like and one of my friends is an engineer, and he kind of did the math, and he's like, you hit the ground from 100 feet going that far with rope drag, because I had 15 or 16 pieces in. He's like, you probably hit the ground going 50 to 55 miles an hour. That's a freaking speed limit. And and he's like, you should just be destroyed. And you were, I mean, obviously I was destroyed. Right. But once you're back in ICU, then they just wait. They're just kind of like, okay, let's see what happens.
Kind of what was going through your wife's mind?
She said, you kind of go on autopilot. Like she's like, they're telling you this stuff, but she said you're kind of like, okay, I have to react to this now, and I'm going to react to this little piece, and that's it. And she's like, because the big picture, you can't even see it. You're just like, oh my gosh, this is so jacked up. I'm just going to focus on what that guy said to me just now. And so she said it was just more or less, okay, solve the problem that we're dealing with right now. There's so many things that we have to deal with. She's like, let's just focus on these minutiae. So today they're going to fix his back. Fine, let's work on that. Tomorrow we're going to talk about, do we take the trach tube out? let's not even talk about that till tomorrow. But then
Okay.
tomorrow rolls around, we'll talk about that. And she just kind of she's very task oriented. And so she's very, like, they didn't give her a long term. They did say, he's probably paralyzed because of his spinal injury. And,
Right.
they don't tell me that. They tell her that.
Right.
And told my folks that. And,
Right.
So from my perspective, it's like, you're just fogged. You're just like, you can't really feel anything because you're so doped up. And I didn't know I knew my feet were hurt, but the one day I woke up and there was a nurse, she was there every time I woke up, it seemed. And I still had the trach tube in, but they had given me a notepad so I could write questions. In my head, I'm like, I wonder how bad my feet are busted. And so I asked her, I wrote down, I asked her how bad my feet were. I think I questioned her that way. And she said they're broken pretty bad. And I was like, okay. So then I did that, that Yellow Pages thing where you walk like this? I did that. And
Right, with your fingers.
Yeah, like my fingers are walking. And she started crying. She not like sobbing, but she teared up. And I was like,
Who's
why?
this?
The nurse.
The nurse?
And I'm like, no, why the hell is the nurse crying? And I'm like, shit. And she's like, your feet are broken really bad. What I didn't know was at that point, my right leg had just in the heel 11 screws and 2 plates. My left foot had a big screw anchoring it together and just holding it. And so she just said, we have to wait and see. She didn't say you're paralyzed. She didn't say you're going to lose your leg. She just was like, they're really messed up. And so I was like, man, she's upset. That's kind of weird that she's upset. And then, another day or so go by and I could breathe on my own. So they take the trach out and then I could talk, which was fantastic because then I could ask questions. And they're kind of dosing you down on drugs and they're trying to figure out my feet at that point. And they would come in and debride them. So like they open all the wounds up and take all the crap out of them. Sure. Which sucks.
Right.
They medicate you really hard and then they do just sits there and cleans them. And it's like hell on earth. And did that a couple times. And then he's like, yeah, your your left foot, we can keep that. We'll take the hardware out. We don't want to keep it in there. But your right foot's pretty messed up and let's just see what happens. And I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, went from ICU to orthopedic care. And then at that point, they were like, you have to leave now because you're stable, but you're not well. You can't go home. So they sent me to like a assisted living thing. And I went there. I was there for 2 months and just PT and OT and learning to walk again.
Okay. So let me go back again. A quick laundry list. So your spine is fused.
My spine's fused for 4 levels. My neck was broken at C6 and we didn't fix it because I didn't want any more hardware. All the nerves that go through there. So what happens is like if I lay down at night, like my hands, like if you climb a lot, you get your hands just kind of curl up. When I wake up, I can only sleep about 2 hours at a clip. And so what happens is everything gets like pins and needles and falls asleep really bad and it kind of hurts. And the nerve presses down and it makes my hand into a fist kind of a thing. So when I wake up, I look like a monkey. I got to kind of break them apart a little bit. And it's just like scar tissue and it just didn't heal well.
Right.
So the right side is more numb than the left side. Okay. And so it's just kind of weird pins and needles. And I usually wake up with a headache. Or left foot, all the hardware was removed. So that foot kind of self-fused laterally. So I don't have as much movement left or kind of to the sides on trails and things.
Right.
But I do have pretty good up and down. But it's the bones all were broken so bad. They healed together, but it's kind of not, they didn't heal real well. So there's lots of like bone spurs and scar tissue and all that fun stuff. And then the right leg, that never healed. I mean, I was in a cast for 18 months.
Okay.
And they said, we got to a part where they're like, okay, so that's it. That's as much as we can do. I had 12 surgeries. It's basically screws, plates, and bone putty.
Right.
At the bottom. I couldn't move my toes at all. The foot was just kind of fused straight out. And so they were like, well, you can't even wear a shoe really. So we'll make you a cast, like a smaller cast that you can put on and off. And they made that and it looked like a Frankenstein boot. It just sucked. And in that interim time, I was like, man, do I want to climb again? What do I think about that? And Cindy and I talked about that at length, and she was like, if you never climb again, totally understand that. But we met climbing. I mean, that was a huge part of who we are. It's a huge part of who I was. And I was like, man, so this thing bit me in the ass pretty good here. And now what do I want to do with it? And I still liked it. I liked the idea of climbing, but I was like, man, I don't know that I'll tie in again. And that would go through my head. And then there'd be days like, I'm like, well, of course I'm going to tie in again. I can't not do that.
Right.
And, fighting with that back and forth, but then them saying to me, yeah, you're not going to climb anymore. And I was like, well, I don't understand that. Why? And they're like, well, because A, your back is fused at a junction where if you break it again, you're going to be a paraplegic for sure. And if you hit your right leg again, even like just hit it hard, it'll shatter.
Oh, man.
So I'm like, okay, well, we'll just see what happens, I guess. So up until for six months, I wore a shell, a plastic thing that kind of kept me upright and protected all the fusion and stuff. And as soon as I got that off, we went camping up in Wild Iris. It was oddly enough in July again. Went up there and we were climbing, and I had sort of thought I'd climb. I had a walking boot on my foot at the time, and I was, man, maybe I'll climb again. I don't know. I just want to go around and be around climbers again. Went up there, and it was super cool, just sitting at the campfire, you know, hanging out with the kids and with Cindy and with our friends, and they were climbing, and I was belaying, and everything was cool. And our daughter actually climbed this route, this little chunky 5'8" up there, super short, probably 40 feet. And I belayed her, and she lowers off of it, and she hits the ground and just looks at me really fast and goes, are you going to climb that? You going to give it a try? And she caught me so off guard. I hadn't thought about it.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, you know what? I'll give that a go. And I'm like, shit, I'm going to give that a go. Okay. So I tied in, and our friend Jeff was belaying me, and he's just like, he looks at me and he's like, dude, I have you. I've got you. No worries, no nothing. I'm like, okay, it's cool. Don't worry about it. So I put my climbing shoe on my other foot, and the climb starts off kind of blocky. So I kind of was just pulling myself up on the blocks, and I was like, okay, this is sort of normal. But then it gets a little bit vertical and kind of pulling up, and I just shook my way. As soon as I started to actually have to pull, I was just shaking. I was so scared. I mean, I think I went through like a block of chalk on that climb. I was so just scared shitless. And got up to the anchor.
But you kept going.
I kept going. It was a little at a time. Like I would go and be like, okay, I'm good. And I'd move a couple moves and stop, and move a couple moves and stop, and checked my knot like 500 times. And I got to the anchor, and Wild Iris is pretty well bolted, and there were 2 bolts, and sure, 2 bolts with 2 draws, and I was like, shit, this is right where I was when I fell. It bolts in the rock. Anchor, I'm looking at it again, and I'm just like, okay, get up to that anchor, and you're kind of on a rail, and you have to obviously sit down in your harness. And I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna sit. And I looked back at my buddy Jeff, and his eyes, I mean, he looked like he was just like, he had me on a gree-gree, and he's like, I've got you really good, man, no worry. And I'm like, okay, let go. And I'm just like, I can't let go. And I'm like, just let go. And I'm like, shit. And I look down, and he's watching me 100%. And right over here, what I didn't realize was the trail kind of went up a hill, and Cindy had walked up this hill. So she was kind of looking across at me. And you know how like you can hear everything on a cliff? She just said, you're fine. You're totally fine. And I looked over, and she's just looking there smiling. And I'm like, okay, yeah, she's right. And I just let go. And I sat, and I was like, holy shit, I didn't fall. Okay, we're good. And then Jeff just starts to lower me, and her and I just talked, and she was like, you're fine. Everything's cool. And I just, walked down, got to the bottom, and Jeff hugged me. I hugged Jeff. I was, okay. And she comes running down, she hugs me, and she's like, what'd you think? I'm like, I'm never doing that again. That's it. That is insane. I can't do this anymore. And I was just like shaking and sweating, and I was happy but terrified. And we climbed the rest of the day. They climbed. I didn't climb anymore. I just remember thinking there were parts of that I really liked again, but it was so terrifying. Oh my God, do I want to do this again? And went home, didn't really think about it, and still had this stupid cast on, and trying to figure out what I was going to do with, life in general. And I'll just wait, I guess, and classic wait and see. But then all of a sudden I started to get this really bad, really, really bad pain in my leg. And it was not like normal. Like I was used to pain because I would get up every morning, take a bunch of drugs, get out of bed to get me functioning because I have so much crap done to me. Your body just doesn't work the same. This pain was so different. It was so intense and just hot. And I was like, shit, something's wrong. I call my doc, and he's like, you probably are infected. And if you're infected, your leg's coming off today. And we had sort of talked about that, but not really.
Wow, that's so interesting to me because I just assumed that you went through this whole thing and woke up one day and they'd taken your leg off.
Nope.
So this is...
I had it.
Wow.
And I had it and thought, this will work, I guess. You know, I'm not obviously not going to be the person I was before.
Right.
I have to figure that out. But yeah, they said, you know, you can keep it, but if you keep it, no more climbing, no more biking, and no more skiing. And I was like,
more.
shit,
I mean,
that's my whole life, right?
Yeah.
Like,
But I mean, it sounds like it would almost be fragile. That it's almost like no more anything.
Well, and like
I mean,
even
you can
like
walk,
I'm a
that's
photographer,
it.
and so I would walk for work, and they're like, well, you know, you gotta like if you step off a curb wrong, you'll break your foot. And I'm like, well,
yeah. That's no way to live.
that
huh?
sucks. And so like my quality of life, like basically what happened was they took all three things that, with the exception of my family, I had my family, and that was rock solid. Like my support group was huge, but they're going to take the three things that I love to do, and mostly climbing, and say, you can't do that anymore.
Right.
And I was like, I just don't see that happening. But I wasn't ready to pull the trigger on, let's cut my leg off. That'll work really
no
well.
worries. We'll get rid of that.
Yeah, it shouldn't take long. And he's like on the phone, he's like, you need to come into the office. And I'm like, okay. So I go in, and he's like, we're going to do blood work. And so they tap me, they take the blood out, and he's like, we're going to rush this through. If you're infected, he's like, the leg comes off right away because we don't want it to spread. So I'm like, oh shit, this is insane.
Like today.
Yeah, he's like tomorrow. Like you're here today,
yeah.
you're going to go home tonight, come back tomorrow, we're going to do that. And I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me.
After everything.
Right. This is about 16 months after the accident. And so I go home, I'm like, oh crap, Cindy and I are talking about it. I'm like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to think. But then he goes on the way out, as an afterthought, he goes, if it's not infected, I think I know what's wrong. And he's like, I don't want to talk to you about that. Just wait. And so I go home. He calls me the next morning. He's like, you're not infected. You need to go see this other doctor now. I'm like, who is this doctor? And he's like, his name is Dr. McIntosh. He is a neurosurgeon. I'm like, why the hell do I have to go to see a neurosurgeon? My leg hurts. And he's like, yeah, trust me. So I go see this guy. I make an appointment. And like neurosurgeons, you can't ever get to see them. They're always they're whatever, overbooked, whatever. He's like, yeah, we can see you today. I'm like, shit, why can't I go see him today? That's weird. So I drive to his office, go in. He walks in, and he's like, they're like kind of like climbers or socially retarded.
What practice?
He is, McIntosh is,
do you know?
Front Range neurosurgeon.
I used to guide a guy at Intermountain Neurosurgery.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so you know what they're like.
Yeah.
They're so smart. They're like socially retarded smart. And so he comes in, and he's like, tell me what's going on. And he's like, tell me about the accident. I tell him about the accident. He's like, tell me what the pain feels like. I tell him what the pain feels like. He's like, okay, I know what it is. And he's like, wait here. And he leaves. Like, that's weird. He comes back in with a sheaf of papers.
Somebody tell me what
somebody
the fuck is
freaking
going on.
say something. But he comes back with it's like a big-ass, thick sheaf of papers, and he sets it down. He goes, you have something called RSD, reflective sympathetic dystrophy. He said it's a nerve disorder that you get from heavy trauma. The nerve, when they restitch it together, it only remembers the last impulse, which was hitting the ground, going 50-something miles an hour. And he said, so here's what's going to happen. You're going to have this the rest of your life. You're going to be on a drug called Neurontin the rest of your life. It's going to progress up through your body, and in 6 months, you're going to be in a wheelchair. My PA will be right in. It is nice to meet you. And he turns out and he walks out. That is not an exaggeration. He just walks out, and I'm just like, what the and
like
so
House.
I'm just before House happened, and I'm just like, and he leaves me. I'm looking at this paper, and I'm just like, holy shit. So
Sorry,
I don't know. No, it's funny. Trust me, it's funny. So then maybe a minute later, his PA comes in. This wonderful woman.
Yeah, she's
walks
like,
in,
sorry
and
about that guy.
she's just like, oh my gosh.
Every
I
time
know,
I come in an office, I'm
the freaking A-bomb just went off. She's like, look, here's what it is. It's reflective sympathetic dystrophy is a nerve disorder. Yes. The way we combat it is with drug therapy and with activity. She's like, you're a very active guy. You want to be you can be active. We want you to be active. What happens is the nerve gate opens in your brain and it can't close. The drug will help to control that seizure point, but it's going to flare up, and when it flares up, you're not going to do anything. And I said, well, what if I amputate my leg? And she's like, you could get above it, maybe. Doubtful. And they gave me the drug that, right there in the office. So like, here's a sample of the drug. We want you to take it. Because it was like, it would flare up every minute or so, and it freaking just dropped me to the ground. I couldn't do anything. Mm-hmm. And the whole time I'm like, they're full of shit. These guys are totally wrong. So I popped 2 of these pills. By the time I got in my truck, the nerve, it stopped hurting.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh crap. Okay, so they're right. That sucks. Drive home, walk in. So like all we've had is bad news. I walk in and Cindy's there. I'm like, hey. So we got it figured out. Here's what it is. Show her this paper, and I'm like, basically, I'm hosed. And she's just like, you've got to be kidding. I mean, you get to that point where you're just like, this is freaking stupid.
Right.
And you don't know what to do. And so I just remember thinking, well, I need to freaking do something. And so I was like, fuck it. I'm gonna cut my leg off and see what happens. Because then I could at least make a decision. I hadn't made a decision in 18 months. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And so
dude, hold on for just a second. This is the most incredible story, dude. Seriously.
Oh, no, it's weird.
I'm so glad you're sitting here.
So weird.
That's incredible that you
get to that point
right.
where you're just like, this is ridiculous. This is why Fitz thought it was such a weird story. He's just like, that's insane. And you just get to this point where you're like, I need to get a little control here. And so as jacked up as it is that I'm going to cut my leg off, at least I can say to them, hey, I want to cut my leg off because I'm sick of this shit. This is ridiculous. And made an appointment with my doctor, my orthopedic, and went in and I was like, I need to talk with you. And he's like, okay. And his name was Doug Lundy. Awesome dude. And I walk in, sit down, and I'm like, all right, here's what I'm thinking. I want to climb again, and I need to cut my leg off to do that. And I need to do that because I might get above the RSD.
You need to cut your leg off to climb again.
I need to cut my leg off so I can go back.
I mean, that's like the quote.
There it is.
I need
that's
to
a
cut my
t-shirt
leg
right
off
there.
to climb again. Like,
and
that's incredible.
Well, but like, here's the cool part.
I mean, I understand why.
Right.
But
well, you just go, your quality of life sucks.
Right.
I mean, you're just like, shit, do I want to sit on a couch the rest of my life and be like I couldn't even chase my kids. I mean, they would run from me. I'm like,
see you later.
Yeah, bye. Daddy can't do that. And, so you're just like, this is ridiculous. And again, our whole world revolves with climbing. And so, like, all of our friends are climbers. Most of them are climbers. And so you're seeing these people do these things, and you're like, my head is warped enough that I go, I still want to do that. That's still badass looking. Right. And so I'm like...
So you're going to one-up Caldwell.
Yeah,
he cuts his finger off.
Exactly.
You're like, fuck that, I'm going leg.
But that little bastard took my parking probably. He's got a handicap tag, I'm sure. And I hope he's listening to this. We just had breakfast.
Anyway,
it's okay. Tommy knows I love him. Yeah. And so my doctor looks at me and he goes, get up. And I'm like, get up. Okay, we get up. And he's like, let's go. We're going to go right now. Come on. And we walk out of his office and we walk over to his nurse. And he's like, when do I this was November. He's like, when do I operate in December? And she flips the page. She's like, December 2nd. He's like, put him in for 8 o'clock. And I'm like, whoa, Doug. I just was making the decision. That's next month. He's like, do not wait. Just, if you're going to do this, let's do this. And I'm like, okay, you're right. He's right. Okay, write it down. So she writes it down. I even got one of those little appointment cards.
Yeah,
December
don't forget.
2nd.
Don't forget.
Yeah, don't be late. And so I'm just like,
you got the phone call.
Damn it.
The reminder
remember your
the
amputation on Monday. So I'm like, God dang it. So I go home, and Cindy knew Cindy was like, you know what? If you're going to do it, I fully support that. It's fine.
Uh-huh.
Go home. That month was just hell on earth. I can't even... You never don't think about it. You're constantly like, oh my gosh. And I met with guys. I met with like Malcolm Daly, who lost his leg. Met with another guy who got run over by a boat. He was fresh off of it, so he was just like, the first couple months, you're going to really question what you're doing, but it'll get better. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. And everyone kind of gave me, this is what it's like when you wake up, and it's going to be weird. You're going into this different...
Well, there must be a certain... like you said, control that you have of this decision, but also, because it's not on the fly as a result of trauma. I mean, they must be able to do it in such a way as to accept the prosthetic. And do you know what I mean? I mean, is that true, or am I just pulling that?
No, you're actually right on the mark. What I did was, when I decided, I went and met with a prosthetic maker in Windsor, Colorado. He said, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to climb again and ski again, for sure, and I'd like to mountain bike again. He's like, okay, yeah. So what we'll do is, you want to cut your leg off. All my junk was, he's like, you want to go 8 inches below your patella tendon, because what that will allow is that you can then fit a prosthetic that is beefy enough to do the things you want to do. I'm like, okay. So I went back to my doctor and said, okay, I want to do, 8 inches below the patella tendon. And and he's like, yeah, we're going to do that. And then they did a special surgery called an Erdl procedure, where they make your tibia and your fibula, they bridge it like a motorcycle strut. And what they used to do is they called it a guillotine amputation, which is really exactly what they would do. They would just go straight across.
Cut across, yeah.
So now you have 2 distal ends that move and are painful. And so, like, typically if you would take a person who cut their leg off and touch the bottom of their stump, it would hurt really bad.
Sure.
So what this guy figured out was that if you did that and then take part of the bone and bridge it across and kind of weld it there.
Sure.
Then take all the nerves and pull them up into the leg, and they kind of equate it to making like an ice cream top. They pull it back and swirl it. You make that end more durable. And that's what I wanted, durability, because I knew I was going to be climbing. I knew I was going to be falling on it and all that stuff. And so
impacting onto skis.
Exactly. All that's mountain biking, you know, you're hitting the pedals. And so went in, did the surgery. Leading up to the surgery, just got as much information as I could, and then waited. And then the week before, classic, like, oh shit, I'm not going to do it. Because like you realize, I don't have to do this. No one's forcing me to do this. And then I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. It's okay. I'm fine. I'm going to do it. And so kind of prepped the kids and said, you know, Dad's going to go in and this is what it's going to be like. And, you know, they were pretty okay with it. They knew, I mean, they had seen this whole process, so this wasn't probably that out of the realm for them at that point. But December 1st, man, like the night before, I'm just flipping out. I mean, just cold sweats. They give you meds to kind of chill you out.
I'm sweating.
I know.
Right now.
I have goosebumps again actually thinking about it. And so I'm just like, shit, I can't do this. There's no way. And you have to shave your leg. So I shaved my leg, and you shave it kind of where they're going to cut it off. And I'm just like, hey, this is not right. And went to bed, sort of, took the drugs, went to bed, got up at 4 a.m, couldn't sleep. Was just like, I don't know if I can do this. And Cindy gets up and hugged the kids, got in the car, and we're driving there, and I'm just like not talking. Cindy's trying to talk to me and keep me calm, and we get in there, and I lay down on the gurney. It's like 7:30 in the morning, and the nurse comes in. She's like, I need to see your leg, and I'm like, okay. And she pulls my leg up, pulls the gown over, and she's like, okay, we need to reshave it. You're not quite close enough yet. And I'm like, okay. So she shaves it, and then she hands me a Sharpie. She's like, I need you to put an X on your leg for me, and I need you to sign your name.
Right.
And I'm like, why?
That's the new procedure.
And she's like, it's because we know then you're saying cut my leg off, and this is the leg. And I'm just like, okay. So I put an X on my leg, and I sign my name. And it's the most otherworldly that you're just like, holy shit, I'm signing my leg, so you cut it off. And she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm not okay. Look at me. I mean, like, I'm a mess. And she's like, okay. She's like, I can't give you anything until your doctor gets here. And I'm like, okay. So I'm laying there, you know, talking to Cindy's right here talking to me, and I'm just like, shit. About the time in my head, I'm like, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to get up. My doctor, Doug, he just comes through the curtain. He looks at me, and he puts his hands on my shoulders. He's like, you're doing the right thing. I know this is messed up. He's like, you're doing the right thing. Trust me. And he just looked at the nurse, and she hit something.
Right.
And I was just like a bonk. And that was it, man. I was like, gone. But yeah, and, you know, they take me in, and I was sedated, but I was awake. And cause I'd been through so many surgeries where we go rolling in, and I knew the OR team. I'm like, fellas, what's up? Craig's back. And I roll in there, and like you're drunk, and you're just like, everybody, we're going to cut my leg off today. And hey, Frank, how's it going? And, you know, they start talking to me, and his PA was this really cool guy. And he's emotional there, cause he told me later, he's like, it kind of sucked, cause he's like, you know, we worked on you for so long,
right, and
you feel like, oh shit, this guy's going to be okay. And he's like, then you have to cut your leg off.
Right.
And I was like, no, you know, it's fine. It's okay.
It's amazing drugs you got.
It's great drugs. So they black you out. And everyone told me like the worst part was when you wake up.
Right.
So when you wake up and you look down, your leg's not there. It's jacked up. And I'm like, okay. So in my head, I was kind of preparing for that. And I woke up, and they had a spinal, so you can't feel anything from your waist down. And I wake up, and I look down, and it's flat there. That's okay. I'm all right with that. You know, you look at your other leg, and you're like, there's my leg, there's my not leg, there's my leg. And you're kind of trying to figure that out, and you're like, I'm okay. But the thing that struck me was, up until that point, I always hurt. Everything hurts. And so I woke up, and I was like, I feel great. I mean, from the waist down, couldn't feel anything. From here up, I was on morphine, so I was like, God, I feel good. And the doctor's like, what do you think? And I'm like, I'm all right. I'll go home right now. And he's like, well, we're gonna probably keep you overnight. Kind of a big surgery. Yeah, we just cut your leg. I'm like, that's fine. I'll just watch TV, but I feel pretty good.
Right on.
He's like, okay, because we're gonna unplug that thing from your back here pretty quick. And I'm like, whatever, I don't care. So we go upstairs, you know, and I'm like, you know, all happy and
so full of
psyched.
shit.
Yeah, you're totally full of shit. You have no idea what's coming. And you're just like, and they all do. They're just like, okay, asshole, you're going to hate life. And they put me in my room. Cindy's like, well, you're doing great. I'll just pick you up in the morning. I'm like, okay, give her a big kiss. And she leaves. And I'm like, hanging. And they're turning that knob down the whole, and I'm not, and they're like, so here's your button for your morphine drip. So just when it hurts, you hit it. I'm like, yeah, I know how to use them. I don't even know if I'm going to need that. They're like, oh, okay, we're going to turn this down now. And I'm like, yeah, just whatever. So they take it off, and about, I don't know, sometime later, that block stopped. And I was like, holy crap, I cut my leg off. And it felt like I cut my leg off. And it was like, oh my God, it was so painful. I mean, that morphine thing, you can only do every 15 minutes. And I'm just like, you're pushing it every 30 seconds. You're just like, it's not working.
Something's wrong, yeah.
3 bags of morphine later, the nurse is like, we can't give you any more morphine. You're going to die.
Right.
Your lungs, it depresses your breathing.
Sure.
She's like, you can't have any more. And I'm like, you don't understand how bad this hurts. And she's like, yeah, no, I do. But she's like, I don't know what to do. So they call my doc at 4 a.m, wake him up. And he's like, bring in the anesthesiologist. And that guy came in, and they gave me another spinal.
Okay.
And they weaned me off it real slowly. And that worked better and much better. I remember he came in, he was like, look, I'm supposed to tell you there's a risk of paralysis. I'm like, just shove the thing in my lap. Just do it. Just do it. I don't care, man.
Which part of my body do I sign
if this doesn't work, it's fine. Either way, I'm not going to feel this. And so they fixed me up. And then you go home and and then you're back to rehab again, You learn to walk again, which is messed up. But, you go through the rehab process, you get a leg for the first time. They kind of like trick you out, like, okay, here's how you're going to walk again. Here's how this all works. You have to figure out your center of balance, because you're now with a fused back, a neck that doesn't work, and now I'm missing a leg. It kind of is weird. Your balance obviously shifts. So you have to figure out, now when I walk, I have to look down. I have to make sure I know where I'm putting my feet, because I'll trip and look like an idiot. And so you just like nuances of things, like how do you go up steps? How do you go down steps? How do you take a shower? How do you go to the bathroom at night? All these things, like, you have to figure out, okay, you can't, because I can't hop. So like most amputees would hop, but my other ankle's jacked up pretty bad, so I can't hop on it because it would hurt it too much. And so with me being so banged up, it's like I have to figure out different ways to do things. And that was like, going back to climbing was like that. Was like, okay, so obviously I can't climb like I used to climb, because I used to just be pretty thuggy and just try to pull through stuff. And now all of a sudden, like, my feet don't work the way I want them to. My back doesn't work the way I want it to. Because of all the nerve damage in my neck and arm and shoulder, my right side doesn't, like, I'm weaker going to my right now. So it's like, okay, so now I have to climb smarter. I have to climb more efficiently. And that was kind of a cool... It was a really great way for me to focus on something other than like constantly being in pain, because again, all the trauma, all the drugs I have to take every day. And I mean, it's been 9 years. I still take the same drugs every day. I have to take painkillers 3 times a day. I take something to regulate my, just the spinal compression stuff, all the nerve stuff. So you take this battery of crap.
Right. So let me ask you this. So you go, we talked about that first climb at Wild Iris, and so now, where does the first step come after you've come out? You've got this prosthetic. What was the first step towards climbing? I mean, because you went from I'm never doing this again.
Right.
I just accomplished one little mini goal by getting to that anchor, but I'm done for good.
Right.
I mean, how did climbing appear again?
I think what happened was we went away from Wild Iris. Then I was focused on amputating, and so then I did that, and then I was like, okay, so now I'm quote unquote solid again. Like, I can walk, I'm ambulatory, I can take pictures again, which is my job. I can do my life. So now, like, I'm trying to figure out, like, before I got hurt, I was like, okay, I was a dad, I was a husband, I was a photographer, and I was a climber. Those, if you were to ask me, that was what I was. Off the record, I would have said I was also very self-involved. I was, my plans were paramount in my mind, like I wanted to, if I had a goal, that was what I wanted to do, that was where I was pushing towards with climbing. And now all of a sudden I'm like, okay, so I'm probably not going to climb like I used to climb. I'm not going to be able to do what I used to do. So now what am I? If I'm not those things, what am I? So I knew I was a dad and a husband still. I knew I was a photographer, but I didn't know if I was a climber. And I kind of just wanted to explore that and just see, okay, am I going to do that again? Is that going to be a big part of who I am? And Cindy and I, spoke at great length, and she said to me many times, if you don't climb, I totally understand that. That's not going to affect our marriage. It'll be interesting because that's what we do a lot together.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to just make the decision on that. I didn't want the accident to be the thing that said, when people said, why don't you climb? I didn't want to say, well, I was in this really bad accident. And I didn't want my kids to hear me say that. I didn't want them to be like, yeah, my dad got wrecked and that was it. He plays Xbox now, It's
right.
Not that I don't like Xbox, but I didn't want that to be my defining thing in my life. And so I kind of said, okay, well, if I'm going to climb, what do I need to do? And so I went back and with the prosthetic designers made a really rudimentary climbing foot. I like to boulder a lot, so I went back to the Horsetooth Reservoir and I started bouldering just by myself. I would never tell anyone I was going. I would just take a pad, go up by myself, and just start moving around again on the rock. And everything was different. I couldn't high step anymore. I couldn't heel hook anymore. I couldn't do all these things that were second nature to me as a climber, but I had to reinvent that stuff. And after a couple months of that, I was like, okay, I think I want to go back to a rope and see what that's like. And Cindy obviously knew I was climbing, so her and I started top roping again. I wasn't allowed to lead anything because if I took any kind of lead or fall, they were afraid I'd break something.
What about even just jumping down onto a pad? Must have been.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would traverse.
So low,
I would stay
traverse,
low,
right,
super low,
okay.
and still mentally, I was like,
Yeah.
shit, I don't know what I want to do here.
You don't even like dropping onto a pad.
It's painful.
I've
man.
never broken any of those
it's
parts
painful.
of me. Yeah.
And when I would hit the pad, it was like a,
Right.
the next day I would have trouble walking because my
Sure.
stump would hurt so bad. And
Sure.
So there was just that whole learning curve of, okay, so I think this is how this all works. And then I started asking, looking around at other climbers who had lost their legs. And I mean, obviously, very small group of people. I mean, it's not like
everybody goes to Hugh Herr.
Yeah, and I
Right.
did. It's exactly who I went to. And I was
Nice.
like, hey, Hugh, how does this work? And he's like, oh, you can make this kind of foot. You can do this. You can climb hard if you want to. And I'm like, really? And so he was kind of cool in his low way. He's very down low. He's very calm. And he's like, you can work on it. You can just push through. And I listened to him. I listened to Malcolm. And I started thinking, okay, well, so if I'm going to climb again, how's this going to look? And that kind of transformed into, what do I like about climbing? And that forced me to go, okay, so before I got hurt, I was this climber who, like I said, I was pretty self-involved. I think a lot of climbers are. We do our own thing. It's very important to us. I didn't want to go down that road again. Number one, I thought, well, I'm not going to climb hard anyway, so it's not going to matter. So I'm just going to go out and climb. And then I started climbing for the sheer enjoyment of it again. And that kind of ramped up then. And climbs got harder. Boulder problems got harder. Things like goals started coming back slowly. I wonder if I could go climb. I mean, at that time it was I wonder if I could go climb the diagonal up at Combat Rock, 5.9 plus, super cool route. It was the first route Cindy and I did together as a couple.
Okay.
And I was like, that'd be kind of cool. So let's go do that. And I'm like, can I plug gear again? And so I went a whole year of top roping, kind of sussing out how my body worked and then paying for it. So if I climbed hard or tried hard one day, the next day I would have trouble getting out of bed because I'd be so wrecked.
Right.
But I was like, slowly my body started to respond to that kind of thing. And Cindy and I went up, and the second year out from the accident, I started to lead again. And so first just started clipping bolts, really easy climbs, just didn't want to fall. Obviously, I was like, no falling. Led some stuff, felt pretty good, and then was like, gosh, let's go. I'd really like to be plugging gear in again. That sounds again, my head is weird enough that I go, that sounds really fun to me. I love doing that. Why wouldn't I do that anymore? And everyone else is like, well, why would you do that? Trying to explain that to my parents was like, what the hell is wrong with you? And I'm like, well, I said this many times. I'm just exploring it. I'm not committing. I'm just seeing if I still like this. And so Cindy and I went and we did the diagonal together. And I remember the first time I plugged the gear in again, I was like, oh man, this is so rad. This is what I want to do. This is what I love about climbing. And, like I said, it's 5.9. It's not hard, but it's one of the most aesthetic climbs. It's beautiful. You're moving up this diagonally crack and, you're just, I'm trying to figure out, how do I get my prosthetic to stick in this thing? How does this work? And I loved it. And I got to the anchor, Cindy comes up and I'm like, this is it. I want to keep doing this. And then I started thinking, well, okay, so there was this climb, there were these several problems in the reservoir that I loved. And just started thinking about, okay, what resonated with me as a climber? Not just like hard, but just like, what did I do as a climber that I loved? And did it just because I loved it? That's the kind of climber I want to be. I don't want to be this asshole who's like, I just want to push numbers. I want to do this. And I didn't do that before.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, were you ever really that guy?
No,
or?
I was pretty laid back. But
Sure.
in my mental dialogue, my internal dialogue
Sure.
was like, I want to try harder. I want
Right.
to be good at this.
Right.
Whereas now I was like, you know what? Nobody cares. Nobody cares how hard you climb, except you. And then B, I was like, the only people who really care what I'm doing are my wife and kids anyway. So it's like, if I just keep it confined to that and we're all happy, then I'm psyched. And so my kids could care less what I do. I mean, we climb 5-7 together and they're psyched. And then I realized I'm psyched too, you know?
Yeah.
So this was really fun again. And it kind of allowed me to relearn the whole climbing process because I had to, but then also like mentally relearn it. And I started kind of retracing these lines that kind of formed me as a climber, like what lines I liked the most. And then I started to go back and do them again. And so did them as an able-bodied climber, and then I wanted to see if I could redo them as a disabled climber. And so that became this idea for this, I called it the list. And I would be driving, you know, or sitting in my wheelchair doing wheelies, and you know, a lot of downtime because you're hurt. And so I wonder if I could do punk rock traverse again, 'cause super foot-intensive thing. And I'm like, shit, I'm going to go just work on that. And so that's what I would do, is I'd go by myself and work on these problems, or I'd go to a route, work the route again. And then it just all kind of started moving on its own at that point. Cause then once I kind of put it out there to like some friends, they were like, oh yeah, let's go do, you know, whatever route. We did that thing together. Let's go do that together. And I'd be like, yeah, that's a great idea. And that's what I would do, is I'd just start ticking these lists off. And the first year I had like 10 things I wanted to do and did them. And, like the best thing I did was went back to the valley for the first time. I hadn't been back to the valley since I got hurt, and I called up. Was going to do a speed climbing comp for this disabled X Games.
Sure.
But I had never done any speed climbing before, so I was like, shit, I don't know anything about this. So I emailed Hans Florine, and I was like, dude, how do you speed climb? Well, no, I wrote
just go really fast.
Yeah, just go up. I wrote in the subject line on the email, I was like, amputee climbing fast, and then I was like, that should get him to open it, because I thought, probably not going to even respond. But he responds right back, and he's like, call me up. So I call him, and we ended up becoming friends, and he's like, just come out to the valley, and we'll do something together. And I'm like, okay. And I'm doing wheelies in my wheelchair as he's saying this to me, and I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll be
sure,
there in a
I'll
minute.
come out there. Sure. I'll be there in June. And so went out to the valley in June, and he's so matter of fact. He's just like, yeah, so what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, let's do El Cap. Okay. What are we going to do? And he's like, we'll just do it in a day. And he's like, I don't like to bivvy. I'm like, yeah, I don't like to bivvy either. We're going to do it in a day.
Especially with another man.
That'll work. And so Cindy's like, I think, you guys should do it. You should totally do it. She's like, you can't be with a better partner up there. So I'm like, okay. So we did. We went and did Lurking Fear. And that kind of opened my eyes like, oh, shit. So you can go hard again and pay for it a little bit the next day, and it'll be cool. You'll be fine. You can get back there. And I remember about halfway up that route, we were on the Pillar of Despair, actually, and Hans was getting ready to lead out this thing, and I just remember looking around and thinking, holy shit, this is it. This is what I do. This is exactly who I am.
Well, you know, I go back to that quote I picked out. You know, I had to cut off my leg to climb, to rock climb, and you know, so it's almost like, okay, so now here's this opportunity that you probably wouldn't even have had,
and that's.
You know,
that is like 100% right. And so this is the part where everyone goes, okay, that's weird. The thing, I've been able to do some of the most amazing things since I got hurt.
Right.
And had I not gotten hurt, like people ask me all the time, man, if you could back it up, would you change it? And there's parts of it I would change. I'd love to not be in pain all the time and take drugs.
Clearly.
But, you know, I wouldn't change it, because some of the stuff I've been offered, some of the things I've done, some of the things I want to do, I've had these amazing people come beside me and say, yeah, we want to help you do that. That would have never happened before. And so to me, it's like this incredible opportunity is probably not the right word, but it's the word I'll use, because it's like you have these opportunities given to you because you are willing to say, yeah, you know what? I don't think this should be the end. I don't think that this should be something that shuts you down. I want to go out and do these things again. And it all goes back to my head saying, why the hell wouldn't I want to do that? Why wouldn't you want to be on the side of El Cap going fast, having fun, hanging out with your friends.
Right.
Why wouldn't you want to? And to me, it's like, well, just because you're hurt doesn't mean you shouldn't do that. And that's what when I go and talk with people now, it's like, just because you're hurt, that doesn't mean squat. I mean, you're hurt. I get that.
Right.
But you can move on. You can have a great life. And I think that's one of the things that you don't see when you get hurt. Like, you don't realize, oh, down the road, this is going to be a good thing. When you're in it, it's hell on earth and it's horrible.
Right.
But you don't have that vision to see out from it. Whereas I do, and I can look back on it and go, yeah, it's you're going to be fine. And I meet people I go back and talk with people who are going through trauma now.
Right.
And, or going to amputate. And I'll say to them, this part you're in right now is one part of your whole life. Don't get fixated on this. This is going to suck for sure, but you're going to go through this. It's going to be good. And Hans was really good at pointing me in that direction and saying, you're fine. You're totally fine. Don't worry about it. And we did that route. I came down, then started doing just different routes around the country and things I love to do, and went back. And then, then I start getting ideas in my head again, like, well, it'd be cool.
Doors are open.
Yeah, doors are open. Yeah. Like, what do I want to do? And then I started thinking about disabled people climbing on El Cap, and there's been several who have done it, done like long trips up the Captain, but not, and ever, they're always with someone able-bodied, and that was always the focus. And so I was like, well, why don't all disabled people climb El Cap? And like my friend Timmy O'Neill is in Boulder, and he was like, well, there's just not that many who want to do it. Right. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably right. But it's like, we should do that. Like, why wouldn't we do that? And so I started itching around for a partner and found this friend, Jerem, who's missing his leg. And I was like, dude, what do you think about climbing El Cap? And he's never done it before. He's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, sounds like a good idea. I mean, he's dumb enough to believe me. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So we met out there in June of last year and started up Lurking Fear. And he's never been on a wall, so we kind of...
So he's a rock climber,
not a wall climber.
Okay.
And anyone who's wall climbed knows it's not really rock climbing. It's a lot of vertical construction and just shit and just getting beat down.
Right.
End of the first day, he's just like, oh shit, he's just in the portaledge, and he was not psyched, and his leg was hurting pretty bad. Mm-hmm. We ended up going 2 more pitches above, and then he was like, I'm done. I can't do this.
Right.
And we ended up retreating, and we go down, and we talked more about it, and his leg had actually fallen off at one point because he had lost a bunch of weight. So your leg is held on by volume, and so if you gain weight or lose weight, you can get hosed pretty quick.
Did I read about this somewhere?
You might have read about it.
Okay.
And so his leg falls off, and so he's just like, this is messed up. I don't want to play like this anymore.
Like falls off?
It was weird. Like
to the ground?
No. He's got a long sling on that he had cleaned, and his leg pops off, caught in the sling. And I'm just like, are you serious?
Those things aren't cheap.
Oh, you see it happen. I saw it hanging in the sling, and I'm like, oh shit. And when it fell off, he just put his head, it was actually kind of funny now. He's on his jugs, and the leg falls off. He just took his head and just put it against the rock. And I'm like, I don't think he's thinking, shit, that's not good. And he just looks up at me, and when somebody looks at you and you're like, yep, we're done.
Right, yeah, right.
I just
communication.
Yeah, you don't even have to say it. And he got up to the anchor, and he's like, I don't think I can do this. I'm like, okay, I talked to him for a while, and he's like, no. And so we end up bailing and go down, and he just wasn't ready mentally. And so I was like, okay, what are you thinking? And he's like, I want to go home. So drove him to Fresno. He flew home that night, actually. I stayed in Fresno, came back up, and then Hans and I did the Nose in a Day. It was a 75th trip up the Nose in a Day. So he and I did that together, and then I split. And I was like, okay, that's probably not going to happen. In my head, I was like, I'm not even going to try that again. And, it's typical with climbing. You get away from it, and you're like, well, it was still fun. Let's figure this out. So a buddy of mine who's missing his arm, Pete Davis, I called him up. And he was like, yeah, and again, he's dumb enough to believe me. So he was like, yeah, that's a good idea. And he's climbed walls. And so he's like, yeah, I'll do that, totally. So I talked to Jerem again and said, I'm going to go back in June. What do you think? And he's like, yeah, I think I'll go back. And so he's going to come back. We're all meeting out there June 2nd. And part of our problem was I think we weren't on a steep enough route. So we're going to come on the right side this time and do Zodiac.
Okay.
That way, his leg isn't going to rub the rock at all. He'll be free jugging most of the climb.
Right.
and we'll see what happens.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, the reason you do 3-person ascents is reduce the workload.
Absolutely.
No matter
And
able-bodied or not. Yeah.
And spreading it out with 3 is, I've always liked that on a wall because, you're not leading as much. Pete and I'll split all the leading. Plus, you're not hauling as much,
right.
which is really
That's
nice.
the big thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're just kind of, you're getting off that division of work, and you're moving more, you
right.
can hopefully cover more space quickly, and we'll see. I'm kind of trying to go into it like with very open-minded.
Sure. But that sounds like a much better strategy.
We'll see.
Actually.
Yeah, I'm psyched, actually.
Yeah. That's
And
amazing. That's so
where
funny
it all
you're
came.
calling these people and like, there's probably people out there like who see you calling them, they're like, don't pick that up.
Because I know what he wants to do. That's such a bad idea. Oh, it's so true too. Because you're just like, I mean, the first time I told my parents, like I was going back to the valley. I didn't tell my parents I was climbing, right? Because I was like, shit, I can't tell my parents. And talking to my mom about visiting them, and my mom's like throwing dates out, and I'm just like, well, no, I can't be there, and we can't come in June because I'll be in the valley, and then I'll be back. And I went, oh shit, you said the valley. And then I'm like, I wonder if she knows what the valley is. And so I keep talking faster, like, oh, yeah, I'll cover it up. And there's silence, and my mom goes, what did you say about the valley? And I'm like, oh gosh, no. And I was like, well, we're going to be in Yosemite. What are you doing in Yosemite? And I must have stuttered enough. She goes, you're going to go climb Yosemite, aren't you? Now, when your mom says something that is not contextually right, being a smartass is the dumbest thing you can do.
Right.
But it's my first fallback position.
Right.
So I was like, well, Yosemite's a national park. You don't climb Yosemite. You climb El Cap. Bad idea.
Right.
She's like, I'm going to get your father. All of a sudden I hear click. What are you doing? Your mom, why is your mom yelling? And I'm like, oh gosh, she said.
Where are these?
They live in Delaware.
Okay,
and so,
is that where you grew up?
No, I grew up in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, but
and
still,
they retired to the East Coast.
They're not
They're not mountain folks.
Right,
Let's just put it that
that's
way.
what I was getting
They're
at.
beach folks. And my dad's like, whoa, what? Your mom came right in the garage yelling, you're climbing. What are you doing? You're climbing again? Why are you climbing again? I'm like, oh, you can't say like I'm top roping El Cap. You can't say that. I'm just like, well, here's what I'm doing, and here's what I think I'm going to do with this guy. And who the hell is this guy?
So wait, they didn't even know really you were even climbing?
I never told them.
And so you've gone through this whole process to get to where you can go out and climb El Cap, and
right.
And you've been
totally hit. We actually went to Italy. We went to Italy, and we went climbing there. And I never told them. I was like, yeah, we went to Italy, and we just like toured around and ate gelato. And they were like, oh, that's so cool. The food is great. And I'm like, yay! And what else did you do? Nothing. I didn't do anything. And so I was just hit it. Totally. And my wife was like, you realize this is not going to work. And I'm like, it's going to work for a while. Right. Don't even question this. And so
at least then you'll have like a record of saying, look, I've been able to do this.
That was my plan. Like, I've been doing this for 2 years. Bad plan. And so they were pissed. And my dad's like, do you realize if you're a paraplegic, you're fucked. I mean, he wordsmithed it better than that. But he's like, you can't get hurt. I mean, you cannot take a hit. You realize that. And I'm like, Dad, listen, I mean, I could get rear-ended in my pickup and get hurt. And he's like, oh, that's stupid. That's a stupid analogy. You're choosing to go do this. And I'm like, you're right, I am. But I'm going out here with this guy who's he's super safe, super good track record. He's a dad. He's a husband. We're not just a bunch of idiots running at this thing. And I understand your fear. I understand. I said, I'm scared, terrified to do this, but it's something I feel like I'm going to go do. And he was like, okay, so if you're going to go do it, I can't stop you. Just keep us in the loop. And you know how that is when you're going to do something, you're not sure how it's going to come out. You're scared. You're dealing with all that stuff anyway. And so now I'm trying to factor in the disabled thing and like, shit, how much do I take as far as drugs go? I mean, what do I eat? How am I going to do this? And
sure.
Hansi was great at just like, we're going to blast this thing, just be done and be down, and it's going to be fine. And so once we got down, I called them the next day, and they were ecstatic. I mean, they were super psyched. And now it's been, like I said, it's been 9 years now. So they're very aware of what I do and they've seen it enough, and they're like, okay, climbing's one of those things where you say, I'm as safe as I can be. Stuff happens, obviously, but, I feel like an idiot saying, well, nothing bad happens climbing. You can't say that.
Right.
You can't exactly pull that one off anymore, but they've accepted it. I mean, they understand it. They don't, I don't know that they love it, but I tell them all the stuff we do now, and they get excited, and I send them pictures, and, they get psyched. And I think it's one of those things too, where they didn't want to see the accident define who their son was,
Sure.
that would be really sad, I think, too. So,
all right. Well, let me ask you a couple sort of philosophical things. I have this little complaint, and I'm actually working on an essay about it, about how so much climbing media, is about finding all this depth and meaning in climbing, and how, and I've been sort of joking that, like, if every time I went climbing I had some sort of life-moving revelation, I'd lose my mind. It'd be like every weekend I'd come back, like, I found it. I went to the Black Canyon and, like, I saw it. I saw what,
I know
a week later
meaning.
I'd be like, I found another, But here I am looking at a guy for whom that is just the truth. I mean, that is just the essence of the truth. The climbing runs through this whole thing from start to finish.
right.
And like you said, it's part of your marriage and it's part of your life. Can you elaborate on that? Is it just the same to you as it was before? Or does it have more power now? Does it?
I think what I figured out was it's not that I have these like epiphanies, like what you're saying.
Sure.
Like, oh my gosh, I understand everything now. I think what I've learned is that climbing for me is one of those things that it calms me down. It calms my head down. So even when I'm scared climbing or whatever it is, I'm still, it allows me to stay very focused on what I'm doing. And when you get hurt really bad, you tend to, if you're in a lot of pain all the time, like, so if I wake up feeling like crap, well, then you kind of focus on that because you're like, shoo, I feel like crap. So I take drugs to counteract that, but you're still feeling, it takes the edge off of you. What I realized was, like, climbing gave me the ability to shut that stuff off, because when I'm actually climbing, I don't feel that stuff. I'm so focused on what I'm doing that it allows me to get away from that. And so it's kind of one of those, I always joke with Cindy and say, man, there are days I just wish I could unzip my body and get out for a while, because it just feels like a train wreck. Climbing is one of those outlets that it allows me to get out of it. And so the movement's really good for me as far as stretching me out, keeps me limber. And it's calms me down. Like, if I go boulder for 2 hours, I feel calm. I feel happy. I feel, it's very simple. And I think in that simplicity is where I find a lot of comfort, because it's not worrying about my body. It's not worrying about the kids or Cindy. It's just like, okay, I'm moving this way 6 inches. That's it. It's all you're worried about. And I don't think there's many things in life that give you that focus. And so climbing's one of those things that I've done it for so long. It's kind of therapy for me almost. Like, it helps me when I feel like shit, I go climb, I feel better. When I feel, if I'm bummed out about, because, like, people ask, well, how the hell do you not get depressed? If you're hurting all the time, how do you fight that? And I'm like, you know what? I go climbing because it clears my head out. It gets the crap out of my head. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'm fine. And climbing is also one of those things where, you're focusing daily on it. You're not like, I'm not planning 15 things down the road with climbing. I'm just going to go climb here today and do this. And it gives you that short-term focus. And I think that helps me as far as, like, keeping my head together. So it's kind of like my therapy almost. Well,
I wonder too, like, listening to your whole story and I kind of have a sense of what kind of climber you probably were beforehand, having started climbing in all these same places you did, almost the same time you did. And I'm wondering if it's like a chicken and the egg thing, to where you were already this person, this goal-oriented person, this person who's very physical. Climbing does tend to be this very goal-oriented thing where you already have those mental lists, whether you're making them for a purpose or not. Did this thing allow you, or just maybe enhance those things, and you found those things that you already had to be tools to help you get through it, or did you change to become that person? What's your sense of it?
I think yes on both.
Okay.
I think I probably had all those things in me to a degree, and I used them for climbing.
Right.
And that's probably the only place I used them. What the accident allowed me to do is it strips away all the bullshit, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, here's what you got left.
Right.
So now what do you want to do with it? Do you want to use it, or do you want to just kind of like maintain it, or do you want to just like not use it at all? And for me, it was like, well, maintaining it would be stupid to me. Not using it would be foolish, because I have this chance to go back and do stuff. And so I want to use it. So now how do I do that? And so I was able to take some of those learned responses I had from before, and like list making and task oriented and training and all that stuff, and use that for my rehab. And that got me back to this person that I think what it made me also realize was it's okay to not succeed all the time. Like I used to be like, hey man, I'd hammer myself on something until I would get it. And whereas now I'm like, you know what? That might be as close as I get to that climb. There's a particular climb in Eldo that I've tried many times, and it's like I've clipped the chains, but I've never clipped it clean. One fall on it. That's one of those routes where you have to get your right foot goes high. You have to high step rock over. It's not a move I can do anymore.
Right.
So it's like, well, shit. So I've tried so many different things, and I'm like, okay, you know what? That's okay not to clip those chains.
Right.
And whereas that's something I had to learn after the accident, whereas before I'm like, I'm going to clip those damn chains. And so, okay, you know what? That's fine. It's a learning process. So I think I've used it both ways.
Well, listen,
Makes sense.
I think we're going to wrap this up. It's just so compelling.
15 hours later.
Yeah, right. No, seriously. I mean, is there anything else you want to say?
No, you've been great. Thank you for letting me babble.
I can't wait to see the movie, just like you.
I'm psyched. I'm psyched.
So I'm looking forward to that. And anyway, thanks, Craig. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Do they see the handshake?
No, they don't see the handshake.
All right. Damn. I don't know what to say after that one. Just go back and listen again, actually. There's a lot of good stuff in there. And now to my usual spiel. If you want to help out, buy some coffee from DefiantBean.com. Head over to the website, enormalcast.com. Click on Help Out. There's a bunch of other suggestions in there. Like us on Facebook. Give a review on iTunes. Donate. Whatever you want to do. Let's keep this thing rolling. I got a bunch of good stuff coming up. So come on back next time for episode 12. Got a couple ladies in the studio. We're going to talk about climbing and boys and girls and what happens when they try to climb together. All right, thanks for listening. Be safe out there. Check your knot. And man, make sure you're on belay. Just make sure you're on belay. All right, we'll see you next time.
Come far, pilgrim.
Feels like far.
Were it worth the trouble?
What trouble?